Hello, we meet again. My name is Jason, and today I have an IELTS speaking test for you. This will be just like in a real test. And what you're going to do is I'm going to read out some questions, and you can practice these online. Now, obviously, you'll want to pause after the question, and I'm not going to be able to hear you, of course. However, for those of you who are a member of InterPass, we will show a way that you can, send us your speaking tests afterwards. So the first thing I'm going to go through today is I'm going to go through speaking part 1, then we'll go through part 2, then we'll go through speaking part 3, then I'll give you a couple of tips on how to answer those questions. And afterwards, for those of you who are InterPass members, you'll see a link on how to send in your speaking answers. Well, hope you do well. Now, for those of you who watch the introduction video, remember the speaking examiner will ask you what is your name and what should he or she should call you. And then the test will begin. So I'm now going to talk about the IELTS speaking test. So when the examiner has asked you your name, the speaking test will begin. And in the speaking test, the whole thing takes about 11 to 14 minutes long. And it's divided into 3 parts. Part 1 is where you're going to answer questions about yourself or about your family. Part 2 is when you're going to speak on the topic for up to 2 minutes. Part 3 is you're going to have a longer discussion about the topic you discussed in part 2. And just so you're aware, the speaking test is the same for both academic and for general training tests. So as I promised, I'm now going to start with IELTS practice speaking test part 1. So what am I going to do here? First of all, I am going to read out the questions. You can press pause and record yourself answering the questions. Then afterwards, I'm just going to give you a couple of little tips on the stuff that you could do. So don't be afraid to go back and record again if you wanted to. So let's look at some questions that you might get for part 1. Let's start by talking about your hometown or village. What kind of place is it? What's the most interesting part of your town or village? What kind of jobs do people in your town or village do? Would you say it's a good place to live? And if so, why? Now let's move on to talk about accommodation. Tell me about the kind of accommodation you live in. How long have you lived there? What do you like about living there? And what sort of accommodation would you most like to live in? So as you can see, for the questions in part 1 of a speaking test, the examiner will introduce himself and ask you general questions on familiar topics, which should be quite easy for you. So as I promised, let me give you a couple of tips on how you could answer those kind of questions. Talk about the things that are around your hometown and village. Use some interesting vocabulary. So for example, you could say it's a beautiful place. It's got interesting infrastructure. You could say it's quite a cosmopolitan city. You could say it's got lovely landscapes. Use some rich vocabulary and try and make your answers between 2 and 4 sentences. When you're talking about accommodation that you live in, you want to use kind of vocabulary that the examiner can picture in their mind. So for example, saying like a condo or a house. Also talk about kind of maybe like the facilities. So the facilities you get in accommodation, like a swimming pool, gym. What you like about living there, think about all the benefits, like maybe it's near a market, it's cheap to live there. So this kind of thing, talk about your hometown accommodation and keep it on topic.